My sister's lie sent me to hell for 15 years. Now I finally exposed her and took everything back. You're not going to believe what my own sister did to destroy my life, and how I finally exposed the lie that sent me to hell for 15 years. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and to be honest, my connection with my family, especially my parents and my younger sister, Rachel, who's 32, is pretty much non-existent. We barely talk, and over the years, I've just come to accept that as normal. There's a whole history behind it, stuff that went down years ago, and it created this silent wall between us. For over 10 years now, I haven't been part of any family holidays, weddings, or even casual get-togethers. Nobody ever talked about it, but it was understood, my absence was expected, and I didn't push against it. Then, out of nowhere, something shifted. Rachel and her husband, Eric, had a baby boy last year. A couple of weeks back, I got a proper invitation in the mail. It was for their kid's first birthday party. What surprised me most was that it looked like it was sent by Eric himself. I recognized his handwriting from a thank you note he wrote years ago after I mailed them a wedding gift. It honestly caught me off guard. I read the invitation a few times just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. It had my name on it, and it was clearly meant for a family celebration. I sat with it for a few days, thinking it over. Eventually, I figured maybe enough time had passed. I wasn't expecting hugs or a magical reunion or anything, but I thought, hey, maybe just showing up could mean something. Eric reached out, and I felt like that effort deserved a response. So I decided to go. I hopped online and ordered a set of classic children's books for my nephew. Something simple but meaningful. I also put in a time-off request at work, which my boss approved. I didn't bring it up to anyone. There didn't seem to be a reason to. I just quietly got ready. Then, about a week before the party, my phone rang, and I was stunned to see my mom's name on the screen. We haven't talked on the phone in years. I picked up, and she skipped right past any kind of greeting. Her voice was calm, but cold. She told me that the invitation had been a mistake. Apparently, Eric had sent it without checking with Rachel first. According to my mom, Rachel wasn't comfortable with me being there. She said my presence would make things tense, and that it was better if I stayed away. She didn't yell or sound upset, just firm, like she was delivering instructions. She said she was calling to avoid things getting awkward on the day of the party. I let her speak the whole time. When she finished, I didn't argue. I just said, "Got it," and hung up. Right after, I went back to the site where I'd ordered the gift and canceled it. The refund came through the next day. Then I opened up my contacts, scrolled to my mom's number, and hit block. I did the same for my dad and for Rachel. It wasn't out of anger. I wasn't mad. It just felt like a line had been drawn, one that didn't need any more discussion. A few days later, I started getting emails from my dad. The first one was short, just asking why his calls weren't getting through. When I didn't respond, another one came. This time, he said my mom told him I'd blocked their numbers. He called me childish and said I was being unnecessarily harsh with her. He claimed she was only trying to keep the peace and prevent drama. He called my reaction way over the top and said my attitude was the reason our family's so fractured. He wrapped it up by telling me to unblock their numbers and apologize to my mom for being hostile. I haven't responded to any of his messages. I moved them to a separate folder in my inbox and left them there. As far as I'm concerned, this situation isn't complicated. They've made it crystal clear. I'm not wanted. And I've accepted that by blocking their numbers for good. All I did was turn a long-standing silence into a clean break. There's no point in keeping communication open with people who only acknowledge me when it suits them, but pretend I don't exist the rest of the time. They expect me to be available on their terms, like some invisible switch they can flip whenever it's convenient. I'm done with that. So yeah, I'm the one who finally drew the line and made what was already fractured permanent. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who took the time to comment and share their thoughts. Most people seem to agree I'm not in the wrong, but a lot of you also noticed there's more to the story, and you're right. I didn't lay everything out in my first post because I wasn't trying to dredge up the past. I just wanted feedback on how I handled the recent situation. Still, I understand why more context matters. So here it is. Not for pity, just so the whole picture's clear. This goes back 16 years, to when I had just turned 18. My sister, Rachel, was 16 at the time. Around then, she started acting distant and secretive, texting constantly and disappearing late into the night. At first, I brushed it off. But eventually, I found out she was seeing someone much older. This guy was around 22, maybe 23. Knowing our parents, who were extremely strict, I realized they'd never approve. I didn't see it as my place to intervene. I was finishing high school, juggling a part-time job, and prepping for college. I only talked to her about it once, warning her she was playing with fire and needed to be cautious. I didn't threaten to tell our parents. It wasn't my business, until one night everything changed. I came home from my shift just after midnight and caught her trying to climb back into the house through a window. That moment flipped a switch in me. I wasn't angry or harsh. I just told her this had gone too far. Lying to her parents on that level could blow up in ways she couldn't control. I told her she needed to come clean, or I would. I gave her until Sunday night to tell them herself. I figured that was fair. I honestly thought I was doing the right thing as her older brother. Well, Sunday came and went. She didn't say a word to them. That afternoon, my parents called me into the living room. They both looked pale and dead serious. Rachel was already sitting on the couch. Her face was red from crying. Then my dad told me Rachel had revealed something serious. My mom jumped in and said Rachel had accused me of sexually abusing her for years. She couldn't even look at me as she said it. I was floored. I immediately denied it. I explained about her secret boyfriend and how I had told her she needed to come clean. I said she was trying to cover her tracks by taking me down first, so they wouldn't believe what I had to say. But they didn't care. Nothing I said got through to them. My mom sobbed, and my dad just looked at me like I was some kind of monster. He told me to go upstairs, pack the essentials, and leave. I did. And once I walked out the door, they told me they had already called the police. That night, everything about my life shattered. One day I was just a high school senior. The next, I was sitting in a holding cell accused of something horrific. Because I was legally an adult and she was underage, the system didn't lean in my favor. I couldn't afford a private lawyer, so I got a public defender. The entire case came down to her word against mine. There was no physical evidence, nothing to prove or disprove her claims. But her story was detailed, and she cried on the stand. She knew how to play it. When my attorney tried to mention her older boyfriend as a motive for the deception, the prosecution twisted it. Said we were attacking her character, blaming the victim. That only made me look worse. To make things even harder, my parents testified against me. They said I had changed over the past year, become withdrawn, moody. Normal teenage stuff, but they spun it into something sinister. They wanted to believe her story, so they did. I wasn't convicted of the worst charge, but I was still found guilty of a lesser felony sex crime. The judge gave me probation for several years and slapped me with the sex offender registry. That label ruined every part of my life. College? Out of the question. No loans, no acceptance. Job hunting? Every application asked about felonies, and once I answered honestly, it was basically game over. Housing? Just as bad. There were laws restricting where I could live, no apartments near schools, playgrounds, even parks. I was treated like a walking threat. For 5 long years, I had to show up at the police station like clockwork. Update my address, job info, car, even my email and social media. Every detail of my life was monitored. After the trial, my whole family ghosted me. Not just my parents and Rachel, everyone. Aunts, cousins, grandparents. They all acted like I had died. I completed the full term of probation, and I made it through the 5-year registry sentence. I ended up learning how to live a quiet, low-profile life. I found a job at a logistics warehouse, one of the few places that didn't dig too deep into background checks. Eventually, I rented a small apartment in a zone that met all the legal restrictions tied to my status. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I built a life that stayed under the radar, simple, isolated, but stable. I never reached out to my family again. Not once. That's the backstory, the part that explains why getting an invitation to a toddler's birthday party hit me like a punch. And why being told not to come wasn't even shocking. That's also why I feel zero guilt for cutting them off. In my mind, there's nothing left to repair. Whatever family we once had stopped existing years ago. Update 2. Something happened after that post, something I never saw coming. A few days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I let those go straight to voicemail, but for some reason, I picked up. The guy on the other end had this calm, professional tone. He introduced himself as a private investigator. Immediately, my gut reaction was negative. I thought my parents had hired someone to dig up dirt on me or harass me some new way. I was seconds away from hanging up. But before I could, he said, "Please, just give me a minute. I'm not calling on behalf of your parents. I was hired by David, your sister's husband." That stopped me cold. David? Why would my sister's husband hire a PI and have him contact me? It made no sense. The investigator seemed to understand that I was confused, so he explained further. Apparently, David had been concerned about Rachel's behavior for a while. He said things in their marriage didn't add up. She would lie about things that didn't even matter. She'd explode over nothing, wild, emotional blow-ups out of nowhere. It felt like something deeper was going on, but he couldn't figure out what. So he hired the investigator months ago to look into her background, financials, social media, everything. At the time, David thought she might be having an affair. But as the PI dug deeper, he came across something buried in Rachel's past. Something that had wrecked my life. This is the part that still doesn't feel real. As part of his forensic work, he'd managed to recover data from an old cloud storage account Rachel had used in her teenage years, one she probably forgot even existed. In that account, he found message logs from an old instant messenger app she used with friends back then. And in those messages, he discovered a specific conversation between Rachel and her best friend at the time. The chat had been timestamped, exactly during the 3 days between when I told her she had to come clean and when she made the accusation that turned my world upside down. The investigator began reading parts of it aloud to me. I didn't say a word. I just listened. Rachel's messages were full of panic. She told her friend that I had found out about her older boyfriend and that she was terrified I'd tell our parents. She said if they found out, her life would be ruined. Her friend asked her what she was going to do. Rachel replied that she had to do something major, something that would guarantee our parents never believed a single thing I said again. She had to turn me into the enemy. Remember how I said at the beginning that my sister destroyed my life? Well, what the private investigator uncovered next will make your jaw hit the floor. This is the moment everything flipped, when the lie that ruined me finally cracked wide open. Then she described her plan, step by step. She said she was going to accuse me of inappropriate behavior. Her words were cold and calculated. She called it the perfect plan, a lie so big, so damaging, that no one would ever question it. She believed it would solve everything, get me thrown out, shut me up for good, and protect her secret romance. After reading that to me, the investigator said he had already turned over his full report to David, including the full message transcripts. He said David was crushed. He had been married to Rachel for 4 years. They had a son together. And now, everything David thought he knew about Rachel, his wife, had crumbled. Turns out, their entire relationship had been built on lies. The private investigator told me that David wanted to speak with me directly. He said David was truly sorry for everything I'd been through and wanted to help however he could. Then he gave me David's personal number and encouraged me to call him. I hung up and just sat there completely still for what felt like forever. It was too much to process all at once. After about an hour, I dialed the number. David picked up right away. His voice sounded rough, like someone carrying a lot of weight. The first thing he said, before anything else, was, "I'm so sorry." He said it again and again. He admitted he'd had no idea what had really happened. He told me that something about Rachel's version of her past had always felt off to him. But every time he tried to ask questions, she'd shut him down, yelling, turning defensive, accusing him of not trusting her. Eventually, he just stopped bringing it up. But he told me clearly and directly that he believed me now. No hesitation. Then he explained the story behind that birthday party invite. He said he was the one who sent it because he'd been having serious doubts about the family's version of events. That was his way of opening the door just a crack, testing the waters. When Rachel found out, she lost it. He told me she screamed at him for hours and threatened to take their son and disappear if he ever contacted me again. That meltdown was what finally pushed him to hire the investigator. Our call lasted almost half an hour. Before we hung up, he promised to send me every piece of evidence the investigator had uncovered, the full transcripts, screenshots, everything. And then he said something that shook me. He wanted to testify for me. He said he'd do whatever it took to help clear my name. I told him I needed a little time to think. Update 3. Things moved fast after that call. True to his word, David emailed me the full report. Every message. Every log. Nothing was blacked out. Reading it all in one sitting was surreal. You'd think it would feel emotional, maybe anger or grief. But no, it was cold. Clinical. It was just the final confirmation of something I'd known deep down for the past 15 years. This was proof plain and undeniable. The next day, David called again. He told me he confronted Rachel. He waited until their son was asleep, then sat her down with printed copies of the messages. He said she instantly went into denial, accused him of faking the documents. Then she flew into a rage and started screaming that he and I were working together to destroy her life. But David kept his cool. He didn't argue. He just kept pointing to the evidence. When she realized her tantrum wasn't working, she broke down, started sobbing uncontrollably. And through the tears, she finally admitted it. She confessed that she had made the whole thing up. She tried to spin it, said she was just a scared 16-year-old girl, terrified of getting into trouble. Claimed she never understood how badly it would all spiral out of control. But David said it didn't feel like real regret, more like one last desperate attempt to manipulate him. And then things got worse. When David told her their marriage was over, she snapped. Violently. She lunged at him, scratching, hitting, screaming. He had to physically restrain her to stop her from hurting him or herself. Once she calmed down enough, he locked himself in their home office and called his lawyer. By morning, he had filed for divorce. He also submitted paperwork for an emergency custody order, requesting temporary sole custody of their son. He cited Rachel's confession, her manipulative behavior, and her violent outburst as proof that she wasn't a safe parent. Then came the part one never expected. In a move David said was all about truth and accountability, he forwarded the entire PI report, including the damning chat transcripts, to my parents. Their reaction came fast. My dad tried calling me over and over, but his number was still blocked. The next day, both of them showed up at my apartment building. I still don't know how they found me, but I assume they pulled my address from the sex offender registry. That information is public in a lot of states. I was home at the time. They buzzed my unit repeatedly. I didn't answer. So they stood downstairs in the building lobby, calling out toward my door, loud enough for neighbors to hear. My mom was crying. I could hear every word through the door. She wasn't crying for me. Not for the 15 years of my life that were taken, not for everything I lost. She was crying for Rachel. Standing in that hallway, she sobbed about how Rachel's life was now in ruins. Through the door, she begged me to talk to David, to try and convince him not to go through with the divorce. She actually asked me to forgive Rachel. Said it was the only way our family could start to heal. It was laughable, really. They wanted me, the one who had been deceived and condemned, to clean up the mess the truth had made. To put the pieces back together after a lie they all believed shattered everything. I didn't respond. I just sat silently on my couch and waited. After about an hour of pleading and pacing in the hallway, they finally gave up and left. Once I was sure they were gone, I made a phone call of my own. I reached out to a legal professional, a lawyer who specialized in wrongful convictions. He came highly recommended. We met the very next day. I handed him all the documents and evidence David had sent me, the investigator's report, the full transcripts, the recovered messages. He took his time reviewing everything. When he looked up, he said what I'd been hoping to hear for years. We've got a rock-solid case. And just like that, the legal process was underway. I haven't spoken a word to my parents. Not to Rachel either. Final update. It's been a few months since all of that. Enough time has passed that things have settled. I thought it was time to share a final post and close this chapter for good. There won't be any more updates after this. The story's over. On the legal side, everything went exactly as my lawyer predicted. We filed a motion to have my conviction officially thrown out based on the newly uncovered evidence. The district attorney's office didn't even fight it. Rachel's messages, her written confession, left them no room to argue. The court hearing itself was short. I was there, sitting quietly, but I didn't have to say anything. The judge reviewed the motion, read the findings, and then gave a final ruling. My conviction was vacated. The judgment erased. My name was taken off the registry. Legally, it's as if none of it ever happened, but emotionally? That's a different story. Rachel's world has collapsed. Her divorce from David is finalized. Because of everything that came to light, her deception, the violence, the instability, David was awarded full custody of their son. She only gets limited visitation, under supervision. David still checks in with me from time to time. He says he feels like he owes me that. He told me Rachel's in some kind of intense therapy now, but she's still pointing fingers at everyone except herself. As for my parents, from what I've been told, they've gone all in on supporting Rachel. They've drained a huge portion of their savings paying for her legal fights and covering her day-to-day expenses. They made their choice. And I've made mine. Me? I'm free now. Legally, at least. I no longer carry that label, no longer have to report to anyone. But don't get me wrong, there was no dramatic emotional release when the gavel dropped. No movie moment of triumph, just silence. The past didn't vanish. The years I spent on probation, the stigma, the jobs I couldn't get, the places I couldn't live, those were real. They happened. They left scars. But now, it's over. There's nothing left to say. Thanks to everyone who stuck around and read this far.